Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Branding and the Beast. This episode, we are talking about tribalism and community within branding and marketing. My name is Alicia DeSantis. I am the owner of 38th and Kip Studio, a branding, graphic design, illustration studio, and my wonderful co-host.
I am Sean Bernstein, owner of The Right Stuff Agency, which is a copywriting agency based in Canada, but I'll work anywhere because, hey, why not?
Why not? So I have some very exciting news.
Oh, okay.
You don't even know this.
Oh my.
I know.
Did we get picked up for another season? That's a really early pickup.
Taylor Swift has officially sponsored us.
Our sponsors must be thrilled. All none of them. Anyway, what's your exciting news?
So when we dropped the premiere of Season 3 several weeks ago, I did some research and discovered that something like 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3 or 10.
Yes.
But the interesting thing is that an additional so if you take that 90% and then an additional 90% don't make it to episode 20, and this is episode 20. So we're in,
so we just have to do one more of these and suddenly we're like in the top 1%.
90% of 90%, essentially.
I've often been called the top 1%, and I thought it was a bad thing, but I guess we'll take this as a win.
We'll take it as a win. And also, what's very exciting about this episode is that this is the first time that we are featuring two guests on our show that do not know each other.
Yeah, that'll be
really very
cool.
Exciting.
I am curious to see how this goes. This is our Dick Cavett era. This could be beautiful. It could be an absolute train wreck. You got to hang out with us to see how it goes down.
Well, I am very assured because both of these people are so good at what they do. And I cannot wait to have them both together to chat about tribalism, which, if you don't know what tribalism is, it's just a fancy word for using marketing to bring people together in a way that is very specific to their needs. So there's a lot of, I almost see it as like the inside jokes of marketing. Like they're sharing specific experiences. They have a place to talk about how they use the product or service or create memes about it. And it's this whole environment. It's also called, in a way, lifestyle branding, if you've ever heard of lifestyle branding. And it is becoming more and more important.
Yes.
So what did I have in the show notes there? HubSpot reported in 2024 that a quarter of social media users are in an online community that like outside of the social media, which is interesting to me.
Very much so. Very much so. So what's your hot take example of a tribalistic brand, if you will, that you really love?
I want you to go first.
So you thought I was going to say Peloton, or as you say, Peloton. I will never on my dying day let you live that down.
I know.
I don't make fun of anybody's misspeech. We're all just humans trying our best. But Peloton, really?
Yeah. Okay.
Only because I'm have drunk the Kool-Aid. But actually, the brand that I am madly in love with, that I'm ashamed to admit it, but has really formed a huge tribal connection amongst its fan children of all shapes and stripes and sizes, is something with a mouse. Disney. So Disney is a really interesting, and Disney actually just did a cross-brand with Peloton, so it's kind of on theme. Really? Disney's a really interesting one because if you have followed if you know the Disney story and have sort of followed the company at all, they have really evolved or morphed, if you will, over the years. So Disney was at first an animation studio, right? You know, that's Walt Disney, animation, Mickey Mouse, all that. That was his whole thing. He himself had started the theme parks, presumably as a way for children and adults to enjoy the characters. In its most altruistic, yes, as a way to make money. I'm not stupid, but really as a way to enjoy a family day out. And he had sort of built the California parks in his time and was working in Florida when he died. The studio, from both its animation and its live action movies, has been through a lot of ups and downs over the years. Uh, they have acquired other things. I mean, don't forget, they now own ABC, they now own Fox, they own the rights to all these characters they never created and all these sort of legacy brands that they had nothing to do with. But where they're really making money is the tribalistic brand end of it, is the theme parks, is the culture. The biggest revenue driver for them, they've had a lot of money losing films over the last couple of years. And if they were just a film studio, they'd probably be dead in the water. I'm sure they'd be hungry for a buyer because they just couldn't support themselves based on these losses. But where they really have evolved is the theme parks, and that's become their moneymaker. So, my wife and I, who are childless by choice, have become these Disney adults. And it's something that I never would have seen myself becoming. I was always a Disney fan, but not hardcore. But when you join that community, you really get to know that community. And we are, with respect to those we are not obsessives. There are people who their house is Disney everything. Their life is Disney everything. That's not us. But we do wear swag and we do try to visit the parks, and it is our happy place. And there's a Mickey Mouse blanket that was a gift sitting behind me, along with a Mickey Mouse Hanukkah pillow that you can't quite see. It's not part of everything that I do, but I'm perfectly content associating myself with the brand. What about you?
Ooh, that's a really, really good one. I had a few. I was trying to decide which one I should choose. And I think the one that is most interesting to me, just because it's got so many facets to it, is IKEA. And the
That's interesting.
concept of the IKEA hack is like, because of as I always say, you don't own your brand. And the tribalist component of the IKEA hack is the perfect example of that. And you have just, Reddit pages and websites and blogs and Pinterest pages devoted to people who really love the IKEA brand and love the flexibility of it and the affordability of it, and are taking it into this whole nother genre of woodworking and crafting and all these things that I honestly can't think of another organization that's done something or had something like that be a part of their brand.
So for our listeners and watchers who don't know, the IKEA hack is using IKEA in other ways than it was intended, or
Yes, yes.
ah,
So, IKEA's I would say, one of the part of their brand values are around affordable, like, super efficient, no nonsense furniture and shelving units, things like that. And so people take these, like, prefabricated elements and add other things to them or mix and match and create whole living rooms, living spaces, and share what they've done to alter the instructions of the original IKEA function. So some of the stuff is really incredible, but it's like using the bones of IKEA. And not just that, but also the whole food court, which when I lived in Denver, it was very exciting for me to go to the IKEA food court and drive 85 miles an hour down 25 to go to South Denver and get the plant-based Swedish meatballs.
mm,
So that too is its whole thing, right?
that's
They have, I mean, they sell them in the the marketplace, and I just saw an ad for it. It was like, it's holidays, plant-based meat, the Swedish meatballs at IKEA. So there's just this whole, like I said, lifestyle around the IKEA brand, which is very fascinating.
So the flip side on that, and I might have shown you when you were here, is that our old condo, Shenandoah's old condo where we used to live, literally backed onto an IKEA. It was
Yes,
our
yes, I remember
backyard.
that.
It was literally across the street. You had to run across traffic, which included Sean once lugging a 72-pound dresser across traffic, which was a little like playing Frogger. But we didn't go often. We went when we needed to.
Hmm.
If somebody was in the area, it was a fun place to meet up. Of like, oh hey, okay, we'll come walk around IKEA with you for an hour. Why not? And then once in a while, it's a cheap cafe dinner when you don't feel like cooking. And I respect that.
I miss it. There's no IKEA. I think the closest one is in DC, and I think you could really slice it a lot of ways. It's a very interesting thesis in how a brand becomes something tribal. And, the last thing I'll say about this is this component of branding is only getting more strong. Like, if you look at Gen Z, they report overwhelmingly that one of their major buying decisions is having a sense of community that comes along with the product or service that they're purchasing. So I'm so excited to let our guests in.
Yeah.
And hear from the experts, because what do we know? We're just
What
here
do we
for
know? We're
just here for a good
learn.
time, right?
Not a long time.
Not a lot. All right, so welcome back. We have our two wonderful guests on the show here, and I am so excited to have you both here. Andrew Jenkins and Don Oates, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your day.
Great to be here. Thanks.
So I'm going to briefly introduce both of these gentlemen in a condensed bio. We're going to get right down to it. So, Andrew, I met at the Toronto AI marketing workshop that Sean so nicely invited me to. And he sat at my table, and I was just blown away by what he had to say about AI and creating communities and just the general concept of where marketing is headed in the future. And I knew that I had to have him on the show at some point. So I am so excited he's here. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He is formerly the head of social media for Royal Bank of Canada, and he has led Volterra for over 15 years. He's an author, social media marketing for business, scaling an integrated social media strategy across your organization. He's an instructor teaching social media strategies and digital marketing at the University of Toronto, George Brown College, and Seneca College. He's also lectured at Smith School of Business at Queen's University. And I can't pronounce that word even, Andrew. Schulich School of Business at York University?
Yep.
Forgive me.
It's all right.
Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. So to say that he is skilled in what he does is an understatement.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. And Don, so I met Don on Lunch Club, and we hit it off immediately, just talking about a variety of things, marketing and non-marketing related. And what really fascinated me about Don is his approach to tribalism and creating a cult brand, and the tiny little pieces that go into that, both big and small, and telling me his story about what he did at Southern Tides, or Southern Tide, is it? Yes, singular. Absolutely incredible. So Don has spent more than 2 decades working in early stage startups. Started his career in venture capital before joining the founding team of Southern Tide, which he exited. And if you don't know what Southern Tide is, it's a very interesting cult clothing brand, which is big in the American South. Since then, he has worked with dozens of venture-backed companies to scale and grow. Currently, Don is an EIR with the Georgia Institute of Technology. Can you tell us what
Yeah,
EIR
sure.
means? Because I
Sorry,
don't know.
I wrote one of my own rules of using an acronym, an entrepreneur in residence.
Oh, Sean, did you know that?
I had an inkling, but I didn't want to,
Okay.
jump the
All
gun.
right.
So
Okay.
it was
Okay.
a guess.
All right.
I
All
shortened the
right.
wrong
So
thing.
let's
I
get.
I could have just said Georgia Tech. Instead, I said Georgia Institute of Technology.
That
I
sounds
should
very
have said
fancy.
Georgia
Yes.
Tech and then used entrepreneur in residence next time.
It's all good. Okay, let's get down into it. So, we're talking about tribalism and community within marketing. So, Andrew, I'll ask you first. How did you get started in this area of marketing and in marketing in general?
I had the good fortune of making a connection on LinkedIn and someone in the UK about something nothing to do with related to social media. And we made a connection, and over the months that followed, we kept in touch. And then I reached out to them to seek their advice. And during that conversation, they shared that they had a project in mind that they needed help with, and they had me in mind for it. And so I was commissioned 16 years ago to do research on all the predominant social networks at that time. And so I conducted research on, and so a lot of people don't realize, oh, MySpace was number one back then, and Facebook was only 100 million users. And so I looked at all the social media, Orkut and, Bebo and all these names that are long gone. But I looked at them from economy, governance, culture. It was somewhat of an academic approach. And so I got paid to become an expert in social media. And then I was doing management consulting, and increasingly social started to find its way into the engagements that I was having with clients. And then after a while of doing strategy recommendations related to social for clients and watching them not do it well, not do it right, or just struggle, said to them, would you like it done for you? And that's become the core of the business now. And we focus on managing social media for our clients and building their communities.
Wow. That's interesting. Look, analyzing them from what a difference 16 years ago.
Well, I don't know how many of you know Second Life. So, when you looked at Facebook and you had to have a .edu email address in the beginning, and you had to have a somewhat legitimate profile pic, well, there was inherent trust in that, which helped certain social networks get off the ground. But then you compared that to Second Life, and if I wanted to be a 3-foot-tall dragon, called invent dragon name here, I could be that and do that in that environment. And so there was a highly trusted platform versus a highly anonymous, and just you catered to whoever had those interests. Do I want to be in an anonymous environment? Do I want to be in a trusted environment? Or maybe both?
Wow. What about you, Don?
Well, I don't know that I ever got into marketing. I had to fall into it. So my experience is not one of training, but I guess more of practice. Again, my career originally started out in global manufacturing, and then had a hard pivot in venture capital, and had to learn what motivates customers to acquire things. And then after joining Southern Tide, really honing that of understanding that we have a core customer, that we are making the best version of themselves. And so subsequently since then, sort of hindsight 2020 and refining that view, it's something that I have brought into my follow-on startups and other startups I've worked with.
Love that.
I'm going to throw an interesting question, and it's kind of based on listening to Andrew's response. Is yes, social media has clearly changed over time, and I think we're more and more skeptical by the day of sort of what we see in the reality of what we see online. You both have been experienced in building brands of trust and trust communities. How do you do that? And then, I'm happy, Don, to start with you and go back to Andrew, but how do you do that in a way where, we live in this world online where nothing seems real? How are you building?
So I think building a
Consumer
brand
trust.
that people trust really sort of starts with these foundational elements of who your customer is. So I have a style that I like, which I call a tribe and a shtick. And your tribe is exactly who you're marketing to and no one else. And your shtick is the real world catalyst that allows them to make the choice to fire their current solution and hire yours. So I think for your tribe, you have to know exactly who you're talking to and then make sure that your message is really tight. And it's not just the words that you use, but it's all the dog whistles that you blow, all of the code switching that you may have to do to let them know that you are foundationally the same as them and that they will improve themselves if they acquire your item or service.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, sure. So at Southern Tide, our hero product was our polo shirt. It wasn't our very first product. We started out with ties, but then realized very quickly that our target customer, who's a 14 to 22-year-old male, primarily in the Southeast, primarily at a handful of universities, primarily in a handful of fraternities, didn't wear neckties. So, I think we were sort of following the Vineyard Vines model there of going in and saying, hey, this is how we get to this preppy crowd. But we realized that there was sort of a space in the polo shirt market. This was in 2006, 2007. And this is sort of at the very beginning for apparel getting slim. There wasn't a lot of slim fitting clothing that wasn't fashion, quote unquote. It wasn't part of the mainstream. So to sort of capitalize on this sort of where we saw that it was going, we had a slimmer fit, but we knew that that might be a little too risky for our guys. So what we did is we grounded it in nostalgic points for them, like say, hey, this polo shirt fits a lot like the polo shirt that your dad might have worn in Lacoste in the late 1970s or early 80s. You might have respected your dad then, and he looked pretty cool in those photos. You can look like that too. But then we really thought about it from the product standpoint about who our customer was and how we could make them look and feel the best. And we had a lot of smaller things, like our polo shirt had a waist. We had a very thick placket to sort of give visual heft at the top. We put a lot of thought into like where our sleeves fall. It fell on the top of your bicep to sort of show off any work you could have been doing in the gym to make you look stronger and wider. Our customer is primarily pasty white boys, so we chose colors that look good on pasty white boys. Because the thing that you want to activate in a man, particularly in apparel, to get him to buy more of it, is for a woman to say, "You look good." And so, while we weren't necessarily making a item for women, we put together an item that allowed the man to feel the best in it and to have his cohort say, "Hey, you look good at this. You feel good in it. You should have more of it." And our shtick there was that we had stretch. So in addition to being slimmer, we put stretch on our polo shirts. So this sounds odd now to say, but in 2006 and 2007, there just really wasn't a lot of stretch in men's clothing, period, particularly in traditional menswear, because it added about $1 or $2 to the actual manufactured cost, which down the line at MSRP could add $5, $6, $7. So it wasn't somebody that they turned to. But what we did was we put stretch in this polo. So not only did it fit better and have a lot of things that made you look good, but it also had a reason for you to put it on and really enjoy the benefits of it. So
and work out in it.
You
can
right?
lift.
Like
you could go to the gym, and
you can do. When I tell the story of typically about how one, I sort of pull my shirt out and pop it back, right? Because no one had it, and we made a lot of small things to sort of get people into this to try it out. Like we didn't size our polos small, medium, large. We called them 38 SS, 38, 40, 42. And because we knew that your whole life, you're a large, you're a big man, right? And so we went in there, but most people aren't. The average size is a medium, right? But no one wants to be a medium. So we sized them with numbers, which made you put them on because who the hell knows what a 38 SS is? Literally no one. But if you tell somebody you're wearing a 38 SS, they don't immediately think that you're small. If you tell someone you're wearing a size small shirt, they're like, ooh, yeah, small. So we had to give them a reason to put it in. And that's what we did. Is we created all these little tricks in addition to really incentivize a retail sales process where we had, merchants who would walk you over and say, hey, try this on. I think it look great. And that was our customer's journey to sort of convert people out of Vineyard Vines, Polo, Lacoste, and hopefully into something like
What I wouldn't give to be a medium again.
Well, I want to ask, Andrew, before I switch it over to you, I want to ask for all of the pasty white boys watching, what colors look best on that skin tone?
You can never go wrong with a turquoise. You can never go wrong with a coral. You can never go wrong with a red-based blue. Yeah. So just want to think about another thing to sort of keep. We're really fortunate. One of our co-founders, Diane, was really great with color. Like this was her shtick, and she was our superpower for this because she spent so much time thinking about what were the color combinations that were pleasing in a plaid shirt. What could you wear it with? We knew what our guys wore, right? Like I can tell you exactly their outfit. And I wanted to make sure that when they chose our items, be it a polo or a t-shirt or quarter zip or whatever, that it would coordinate well with what they wore. So we needed it to match, but we needed them to look good in it. So you can never go wrong with corals, teals, blues, and also most men only generally find blue the most pleasing color. As our eyes, our rods and cones degrade, blue stays vivid for men, while other colors dull. So if you know you have an older male base, if you were going after, say, a 40 plus crowd, you may want to merchandise your line heavy in blues or make your designs or colors for your website or your material blues because that looks the most vivid to men who have aging eyeballs.
That's interesting.
Yes. Okay.
Learn something new. Andrew, I'm going to flip the question to you. Sorry, Alicia, bear with me for a second.
No, I'm just like, you know how I get on these. I always get like, worked up on these podcasts. So I just need a moment. So sorry. Sorry,
No,
Andrew. Sorry, Sean. I'm going to be quiet now.
Oh, good.
It's all good. Don't sweat it. These guys are clearly fonts of knowledge. Interesting, building that sort of trust in the clothing brand and building that tribe. Andrew, in financial services, where you would come up, at least that is so integral, and especially in a world that is, really hard to confirm that veracity of what someone's telling you in financial services. So what was your secret sauce there?
Not so much secret sauce, but I mean, by its nature, they are stewards of people's money. And so you have to convey that through your content. And by the mere fact that it is a highly regulated industry, so what you can and cannot say in social has to adhere to compliant standards. And if it doesn't, then the financial institution could be offside. And so the goal was to avoid that. That does mean that sometimes things are a little more conservative. You don't shoot from the hip. While memes are really, really cool, sometimes a large financial services ship cannot turn fast enough to take advantage of a meme, or by the time you brand or morph it to fit a financial institution, it's lost its effect or what have you. But one of the things I wanted to touch on related to tribe, regardless of financial services, is this idea of tribes have inherent trust. And based on authenticity, and if we want to take the lore of tribes a step further and say tribes tell stories around campfires, and stories build trust, and they the way stories are told to for the passage of time, that from one generation to another, or from one member of a community to another, and you don't sell inside a tribe. You tell stories to one another, and it sounds. I don't want to sound too woo woo or kumbaya or what have you, but there's a lot of truth to that. And I was just giving a presentation recently, and I shared the story of Jordan's summer project. And for those of you who are not familiar, this is a young woman who's on the autism spectrum, and she had graduated high school, and her mother was wondering what's the next step for her. And they conceived of this summer project where they would make T-shirts. And the underlying principle of these T-shirts was about kindness and sharing joy and kindness and generosity. And this summer project has turned into a thriving business with 2.6 million people following their journey. And they're not overtly pitching. They're sharing Jordan's story about how she has adjusted to being part of an entrepreneurial endeavor, showing how someone, given her circumstance, has accommodated and adjusted and is thriving. And her mother's there to support her and tell their story. And now, you watch their TikToks, and it's inside a warehouse filled with merchandise, and they're telling their story. And it's not about, hey, I mean, they do talk about, oh, here's the stickers for summer. So they are talking about product in a sense, but at times, but it's directly linked to the story. And one of the best parts is Jordan, when it comes to, they sell a variety of things, but Jordan will bundle up a t-shirt, put an elastic around it and put it in the box. And this is recorded. And people know when the t-shirt shows up and it's in this ball wrapped in elastic, they know that Jordan touched it. It's directly from Jordan versus
Interesting.
it's just this in this generic piece of plastic. And so like the emotional connection that the customer makes to Jordan and their journey. And the other thing, example I want to give, um, I shared a story of my first entrepreneurial endeavor on LinkedIn, and it was something that happened nearly 30 years ago, and it was a failure. And that's the top performing post I've had on LinkedIn in the last year. Had nothing to do with my current business, had nothing to do with selling something. It was telling a story. And so oftentimes I think we lose touch with the fact that people show up because it's not about necessarily being entertained, but to be engaged and not to be pitched. A long-winded answer to your question, but just my take on things.
That what you said about the campfire and the telling stories reminds me of what I wrote in my brief that I forgot to talk about in the introduction, which was around the human what's truly the human element, right? Is connection, not fear, hunger, safety, all these things.
Right.
And Andrew, from your perspective, the way you frame that's interesting to me. And even Don in some capacity around these newer technologies with clothing and things, around that we think of a generation. What's a generation now? 20, 25 years? And that social media was almost now at the point where it's been around for one generation of human existence. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with even, 20 years from now with AI and even newer technologies when it's been one human generation. How are we interacting with it? As though, if I think social media, when I was your age, we're starting to say those things around Facebook. When I was your age, we needed an .edu. So it's interesting how that's evolving too with these generational stories that come with tribal branding.
Well, and the tribe on Facebook is 45 years and older. The tribe on Snap is 25 and under. And so if you are in the social media space and you serve more than one tribe, the writing's on the wall. You have to be on more than one platform. You have to have more than one type of content conducive to those tribes. And you have to show up authentically. Versus the joke about spot the Fed at Coachella. You want to be welcome.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So Don, I would ask you. So Southern, from what I understand, that the majority of the work that was done at Southern Tide was done pre social media
For the most part.
explosion.
Yeah, we leveraged Facebook, but it was back in what I would refer to as the golden age of Facebook, where I had 120, 150 something odd thousand followers, and the minute we pressed send, all 150,000 saw it. Right. It was long before monetization strategy had been placed in. So it was really easy for us to get a message out there. But frankly, it was important, but not to the extent that it was now. A lot of our brand was built on real life influencers. We had a really strong college ambassador program of about 150 or so odd ambassadors at target universities. And they had to have events at least twice a month where they would give out products, stickers, goozies, whatever, and then collect Facebook signups and email addresses. This was our opportunity to build our marketing database. So we used it more for that and pushing, but I can't remember exactly. It's been a hot minute, but I think we might have done like a post a week, maybe two, right? And then eBlast, we probably did once a month, right? Like it was an inordinately small thing.
Wow.
So much of
Yeah.
our business was built on retail sales, right? Like we knew that sort of men's specialty store was where our buyer shopped. It was aspirational. It wasn't the mall. The mall was not who they are. They wanted a specialty men's store that sort of put them in rarefied air. And then the benefit of that is instead of me giving, in this case, Meta or Google a amount of money to acquire a user, so my user acquisition cost is pretty high, but my overall gross margin is large because I'm going direct to consumer. We just flip flop that. I cut my initial gross margin in half, closer to 60%, because I had to give that to my merchant. But if I was good to them and I incentivized them and I had a great product that I was driving people to their store with, then there was a highly likelihood that that merchant was going to walk somebody over and say, "Hey, have you seen this? You're really going to like it. Your friends are probably wearing it. Maybe you've seen it on campus," right? So it's a it was important, and we definitely worked it. I remember us making the push to like get over the 100,000 follower line, but it wasn't so much everything to us at the time.
So, because I would segue into the next question is what, with what you're currently doing as a strategist, what's something that's shocked you in the industry in the past year?
Maybe I'm just too damn jaded, but I should really say that anything in the industry has shocked me this year. I'm sort of shocked that social media has hung on as long as it's hung on in its current iteration, right? Like in full disclosure, and this is maybe why we're paired. I don't do social media. I haven't made a social media post since 2011, and I don't intend to. Right? I have a lurker Instagram account that I use to look at stuff with, and I will occasionally like the posts of people that I know very well, like so well that I could call them on the phone right now and talk to them. But I wouldn't do that to a stranger. I don't understand the motivation behind that, and I'm not interested in engaging in that way. So for me, for somebody who does not live in this world, sees the value of it, realizes that it has to be exploited in order to move a business objective forward, I'm just sort of surprised that there's nothing new and shiny, right? Like I'm curious about who's going to unseat Meta. Snap is an unworthy competitor. And the only thing that really, in my personal opinion, that keeps it around is the ephemeral nature of its messages. Keep your mom and dad from knowing what you're sending to your friends. But outside of that, I don't know that the platform is significantly better than TikTok or Instagram or whatever. So, I'm sort of shocked that people still trust influencers, like online influencers, especially when it's so formulaic. And I feel like we could all do a Jet and Pookie sketch right now, and everybody would get it because it's part of the zeitgeist. Yet people still trust the cliche. I guess it's no different from people trusting magazines and television ads for the decades before then, or but I'm sort of surprised in a world that is highly tribal and siloed in both information and personal interactions that we have not seen a pitch away from the online influencer and to turning to your local tribe of people with whom you know and trust to be your referral source. Maybe we're seeing that it's just unmeasurable. So, that's a little bit of a black hole.
Andrew.
I'll start with on the thread of influencers.
Yes.
We have done some work with them and so on, but what I've noticed, especially on TikTok over the last year or so, it's almost like it's an inevitability that a rising influencer will come to their demise. Something will come out historically, or they'll make a misstep. They'll say the wrong thing, and with the recent election, there's polarization between like, oh, it's come out that you actually support so-and-so versus so-and-so. Oh, well, you're canceled for that. Or they may, there's a bunch of influencers that introduce their own brands, and some of them are doing it in misstep. The Haktua girl just introduced some sort of cryptocurrency thing, and it's been a colossal failure. Now, no disrespect to her, I don't think it was her. It was someone behind the scenes was using her platform or with her permission. But again, opportunistically, and it's blown up. Now, will she survive it? Likely, but what's happened though is that I think brands increasingly have to increasingly scrutinize any influencer that they hitch their wagon to. Because if something comes out of it, oh, maybe we should have partnered with them. The other thing with respect to social, and I'll use the election recently, they talked about it being the podcast election. And the likes of MSNBC and CNN and Fox and so on, while they have a large following to a degree, they don't have near the following that some certain podcasts do or social outlets do. And an example I give, and I think some of us are old enough to remember the final episode of MASH. Over 100 million people watched that the night it aired. The final episode of The Office, the American version, when it aired on NBC, was 6 million people. But then it went to Netflix, and hundreds of millions of people have watched it. So what's happened now is traditional media is falling by the wayside. And now I'm consuming content, the content I prefer, on the device that I prefer to watch it on or consume it on. And that makes for a lot more work for people trying to reach those audiences, because now it's fragments. I've got to have a podcast. I've got to have an infographic for Pinterest. I've got to have video shorts for YouTube. And in some cases, these are givens now in order to reach a cumulative audience that used to be reached with a single episode of television on traditional TV. And oftentimes I'm talking to clients or prospective clients saying, forget how you use social, or even if you don't use it at all, that is immaterial. How does the target audience or the tribe that you're trying to build, how do they behave, and where do you find that behavior? And sometimes it's going to be in multiple places. And we have some clients, well, we're thinking about doing a podcast, and I'll say, are you prepared for a multi-year commitment? Like, what do you mean? I said, all the podcasts that are commonplace now that are known by name are 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 years in. Oh, I don't know about that. Well, then probably not something you want to entertain just now.
Yeah, you're not going to launch one episode and just I'm thinking of the keyboard cat meme where I'm on my first podcast. Oh, I got, I got a million subscribers overnight.
Well, like Don was saying, there was a time when you could post once a week on Facebook and have it really perform. And if you're starting a Facebook page today, if you don't have money for a paid budget to get that page off the ground and raise awareness, it will remain unknown forever. It is a war for attention. And so I don't want to use military cliches or terminology, but there's just, it's harder and harder. We are, there's value in the niches, but can you get enough value from one niche or a few?
May I ask a question? You're an expert in this. If you're a client, or if I was a client of yours, and you were advising me to pursue a strategy with influencers, do we look at that longitudinally as a ladder strategy where we talk to this person to get this exposure, and then once we get to that, we talk to this person to build this exposure? And by targeting silos and messages, that allows us to have a holistic view of our tribe. Because sort of what you sort of insinuated here is that there's not durability, right? Like, these people are not building durable brands. They're as ephemeral as a Snap message, right? Like, who knows how long Jet and Pookie are going to be hot, right? Like, Call Her Daddy's cool today, but what happens when Call Her Daddy is a mommy and doesn't have the time to do this, right? Like, I mean,
why do I not know what any of this is?
I'm hanging by a thread at this point. Don is so much cooler than I am.
Well,
Don is so AL.
Do you know the Call Her Daddy podcast?
I do.
No.
Okay.
Alicia, do you? Oh, my goodness.
So, I mean,
I don't listen to podcasts.
But if you didn't know the host...
there's the hot take.
Well, it's my understanding she's a spin-off from Barstool Sports.
Yes, I believe so.
And so she's come into her own. I'm forgetting her name.
Alex.
She made a name for herself. The most recent thing that she hosted Kamala Harris. And they flew to Washington D.C., set up a studio in a hotel room, set up the Call Her Daddy set in a hotel room, and um, supposedly behind the scenes they were trying to get the same thing done with Rogan, but Rogan wanted her to come to Austin to his studio. He wasn't willing to do, and that's not a criticism, just sort of stating a fact. Will Call Her Daddy, have like a lifespan after that? Hard to know. I had an intern, a summer intern once that was an influencer in her own right, 1 million followers on Instagram and 1 million followers on TikTok. And we have an art gallery here in Toronto, and she went to this exhibit and you could stay at the gallery as long as you wanted, but you could only spend a certain number of minutes in each part of this particular exhibit called Mirrors, which you could go through multiple times, but you could only linger in each. Well, this is where influencers are different. She went to the gallery with her boyfriend, who's a photographer, and she had a number of outfits in her bag. And she went through the exhibit multiple times in different outfits with different pictures. So where you and I think about, we're going to go to the art gallery for a visit, she's going to work. And she's leveraging the venue, and she's thinking content. And again, different frame of thought, different objectives. And when I was at the Royal Bank, we were running an Olympic campaign, and we were vetting influencers, or like then it was really about bloggers. And we had to vet them. And an agency that we were working with had a list of influencers. And I was like, nope, too political. And I was scanning their social feed. Nope, can't have that association. And so, but now there's all these different people that are from micro-influencer. So yeah, you want to hire Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner when the Fire Festival, a single post on Instagram was $250,000.
Yeah.
Now, she didn't get caught up in the Fire Festival controversy after the fact, but then you can also hire a micro-influencer $500 for a post. So you've got to figure out, is one or more influencers right for who I'm trying to reach? And then there's also the spectrum of how much some influencers don't want to be told what to do.
Sure.
They have their following, they want creative license, and not every brand is comfortable with that.
I think the challenge for me personally, as a startup and working with other startups, is if we choose to engage influencers, they can't provide us the analytics we need. Some can, right? But no one's coming to me with a media sheet letting me know how all of their things perform, the types of posts that they perform. Maybe there are people out there, but it seems that that is not the majority. That is the minority of people who understand that it's the analytics behind it. And that is what's most important about this outreach. Sure, it's great to scream it into the abyss, but if we can't measure it, we might as well have just stuck our head out the window and did it, because it didn't.
Well, increasingly you are seeing influencers showing up with like a media kit, and they've got my average engagement is X, my reach is Y, etc. Like if they want to be hired, they have to show that there can be a certain expectation of ROI and a certain expectation of performance. And if they can't, that's probably a red flag. But the other thing, and I'm just going to use LinkedIn and B2B as an example, we'll tell clients, your company page is not going to light the world on fire. No disrespect to LinkedIn. Most of the value of LinkedIn is going to come from your own employees sharing, not just sharing your content, but sharing content related to you, telling things about their own experience working for the firm and so on. The cumulative reach of even a small, modest set of employees is going to far outperform that of the company page. And if you want to say that those employees are influential in their own way, there's something there. But it's also about the culture of can I mobilize my employees to amplify, to act as ambassadors and advocates for the firm and so on. And oftentimes organizations are overlooking, startups, can we leverage the personal brand of one or more of the founders? And, So you can, I don't want to say manufacture influence among employees and so on, but don't overlook it. Like, you'd be surprised at actually how much benefit an organization can have from founders with a strong personal brand, employees that are comfortable sharing in social and so on. And not just on LinkedIn. I mean, they can be, Instagram is great as a portal into a company's culture for recruitment, um, just to celebrate successes and things like that. So it doesn't have to be a sales pitch, and it doesn't have to be, check out the latest, products XYZ.
John,
I
you know
I
what
want
I'm
to be
gonna say?
mindful of. Okay. You say it, and then I'm going to throw out one last question. But you go
Well,
first, Alicia.
well, I'm gonna ask. Do we have time for 2 more questions, or do we only have time for 1 more question?
I was going to hybridize 2 questions into one.
Okay, you do it. Go on.
Okay. I'm going to ask each of you, and we're going to start with Dawn. I'm going to ask you a two-parter. What is something that you still want to know and still want to learn about this industry? And what's a piece of wisdom you want to pass on to someone who's looking
Everything.
to come up?
I want to know it all. I feel like I know nothing. The more that I know, the more I realize that I am deficient in every facet, and I need to acquire more information. I think that
This is a humble.
Of
Only
the
hu-
little you do know, I'm glad we had you on as the expert,
only
frankly.
humble people are on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Of the little you say you do know, what do you want to pass
yeah,
on?
no, it's a no. I mean, yeah, I feel like an idiot, right? But there's beauty in being an idiot. Because,
you and me both.
yeah, I mean, idiots.
The proverbial "you don't know what you don't know." Is that what you mean?
But no,
The proverbial "I don't know what I don't
exactly.
know."
Yeah, there's I've had 2 startups now. God, I probably should do another one, but I know how hard it is, right? Like, the first one, I just didn't know, right? Like, if I had known how difficult it was going to be, and it was very successful, I might have reconsidered. But now that I know exactly the hole that I'm jumping down, I take pause, right? So the beauty of this sort of tabula rasa idiot effect is you don't know what you're getting into, so hell, why not give it a try, right? And so I think there is some opportunity in it, but still at the same time, I am a sponge for information and knowledge, and want to know as much as I can. And I wish that I could tell you, hey, I'm dying to know more about this, but what's the shiny object that I'm looking at right now, right? Like, I could sit here and ask you guys questions for the next 5 hours. That would be it. And then what was the second part?
Well, something that out like I said, out of the little that you claim to know, what do you want to pass on?
Yeah, I mean, I
what's
would.
the pearl of wisdom?
The things that I say to a lot of my founders that I work with now all the time is all you're doing is making your customer the best versions of themselves. And it doesn't matter if you are making apparel or toothpaste, or you have an HR software as a service model, or you have the latest LLM, right? Like, if you're not actively improving your customer on a daily basis, then you are doing it wrong.
That's good wisdom. Andrew, what do you still want to know? What do you want to pass on?
I'd like to know more or do more in the area of video content for myself. I do have a background in film and television. I was involved, I have a degree in film production, and made a movie that was in the Toronto Film Festival. And I'd like to sort of harken back to that point of view as it relates to content production. So I do a lot of written content, and I have a podcast, and I'm here on this podcast. That's all stuff I enjoy, but I'd like to do more video content, but driven from my own ideas and things like that. But there's when you look at some of the videographers and vloggers, I like what I see, but it's about finding the time and the wherewithal to do that. So that would be the sort of what do I want to know more of or do more of category or answer to that question. And as far as some advice to leave people with, it's a simple word. It's consistency. If you want to have success in social media marketing, consistency is half the battle. If you're posting once every month on X or on Facebook, don't bother, because the likelihood of it being seen by anyone is negligible. If you can get to 3 to even 5 times a week, I know that sounds daunting, but it's the reality. That's on the organic side. And increasingly it's pay to play. So if you can muster up some budget to boost the periodic posts for visibility, it's going to have a payoff too. But to do all of that with some degree of consistency.
I'd like to add, coming full circle here, the concept of consistency with tribalism and going back to the human need of what do babies and toddlers crave, right? Consistency. And I would argue humans, adults in general, still really like consistency and habits and consistency, with a partner and their job and their boss, knowing that the humans are interacting with are consistent. So that's my full circle. I hope you guys are impressed. Don, you look impressed. Sean, you're never impressed.
I am always
Andrew,
impressed
I
with you.
can't tell.
Well, I can't clap exactly, so
Oh.
one-handed clap. So
All right. We're at time. So I will open it up to tell us where we can find you. Don, you go first.
I'm probably the worst person with this because, as I was mentioning to you guys
You're
before
not
we
on
got
social.
on, I don't do social media.
Yeah.
But I do have a LinkedIn page, and most recently, a dear friend of mine cajoled me, maybe I think bullied might be the better word, into putting my last name and a photograph back on there. Now I've taken off all of my experiences and titles, and even my year's works are sort of jumbled up, and it's not even half of what I've done. But I guess you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Don Oates. I'm the one who says I help startups grow, and I think that's really all the information there is. But yeah, you can link with me there.
Andrew?
Easiest place. I mean, you can find everything else about like my company, Volterra, etc. Just go to LinkedIn, and find me there, and everything branches off of that.
Sean?
Fantastic. You can find me at The Right Stuff Agency. So I'm on LinkedIn under my personal. I'm going to have actually some more action, Andrew, on my business page. I'm in a one-man army, so it's not going to be anything overwhelming, but there'll be a bit of a differentiator. The Right, WRITE Stuff Agency. Sean at The Right Stuff Agency on Instagram, Facebook. Not that hard. And you, Alicia?
Find me at 38th and Kip, KIP. Search for 38 and Kip. I'm all over the place. As we talked about in the last podcast, Alicia DeSantis. I don't think there's any other Alicia DeSantises that are designers and brand strategists on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
This was truly wonderful. To all of our folks listening and watching, thank you again for episode 20. And we'll see you all on the flip side. Thank you.
Thank you.